بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So previously we spoke about janazah or firstly we spoke about what to do when someone passes away immediately, right? We spoke about that. Then last week we spoke about the things or the kafan and the preparation for the Salatul Janazah. And now, inshallah, today we'll talk about Salatul Janazah itself. Very important discussion. Before we begin it, he says, "أعلم أن لصلاة الجنازة صفة وشرط وركن وسنن." The scholars, they have divided Salatul Janazah into different aspects. So now the first is, what's the ruling of Salatul Janazah? So the ruling of Salatul Janazah, number one, is that it's fard kifaya, right? It is fard kifaya, meaning, as I've said last week also, that if a few people in the community do it, then that absolves the entire community. But if no one does it, the entire community is held responsible and they're sinful for not fulfilling the responsibility of Salatul Janazah. Number one, right? And this is something that's according to ijma', meaning according to the vast majority of scholars, they say that this is the ruling, that you must pray Salatul Janazah, and it's fard kifaya. Number one. Right? And by the way, just as a note, if someone rejects something which is unanimously accepted, something which is ijma', which is known as ijma', if someone rejects ijma', which is the consensus of the scholars, then that person is considered a kafir, because they've rejected something which is well established and unanimously accepted by the scholars. That's just a side note. Okay. Meaning including amongst, within this also, they say that burial is also fard kifaya, washing is also fard kifaya, and also preparing is also fard kifaya. All of these things are fard kifaya, meaning someone must do it. If no one does it, then the entire community will be held responsible. Okay. All right. Now the conditions of it, you have 6 conditions of Salatul Janazah. Number one, the Islamul Mayyit, meaning that the Mayyit must be a Muslim. Right? We believe that the Mayyit must be a Muslim to perform Salatul Janazah. Number two, that he must be in a state of tahara, meaning cleanliness. Right? So meaning that you wash the body, he should be clean. Until he goes in the dirt, then of course that's when the body will start decaying and so on. Until that point, tahara should be maintained. Okay, so make sure he's clean, the body is clean. Okay. Number three, وحضور. According to us, absence or the presence of the mayyit is also a requirement according to us, and I will explain. I'll explain on this inshallah. But according to us, the presence of the mayyit is necessary. ووضعه, you must place the body also in front, meaning you must place the body. You must place it. It shouldn't be like on, on the floor, or it shouldn't be like, rather on some animal, or as they say that you shouldn't be on an animal. Right? So that's what it means. The fifth condition is that the mayyit, or most of the mayyit, meaning the body of the mayyit, let's say if something happens and the body is disfigured and so on, then most of the mayyit should be in front of the imam, meaning just in front of them. Whatever is remaining of the body should be in front of the imam, and they should be directed towards the qibla. Obviously, people should be facing towards the qibla. So therefore, in that case, according to the Hanafi madhab, Salatul Janazah is not applicable to those who are not present. And also, some, if, for example, the Salatul, the mayyit is placed behind the imam or something, that's also not valid. Right? This, again, generally not done, but just something he's just putting it there. At the same time, now people, they raise the objection. Someone may raise the objection. They'll say that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he did pray Salatul Janazah al ghaib. He prayed in the case of Najashi, right? In the case of Najashi, it's mentioned that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam prayed Salatul Janazah al ghaib, right? So then the scholars, the Hanafi scholars, they say, they give one of two responses. They say that either this was specific to the Prophet ﷺ, that only the Prophet ﷺ, because in his entire life he only prayed Salatul Janazah al ghaib once, and it was for Najashi. right? So it could be that that was a very specific situation, number one. Or the scholars, they say that when the ahadith that say he prayed, they can be interpreted to mean that he made dua, for example, right? So essentially, according to the Hanafi madhab, you should not pray Salatul Janazah ala al-ghaib. Rather, the mayyit should be present in front of you. Okay? This is the Hanafi madhab. The other scholars, they disagree, right? For example, Imam al-Shafi'i, yes, Imam al-Shafi'i, he says that it's okay to pray Salatul Janazah ala al-ghaib, which I'll mention later as well, inshallah, but just remember this, inshallah. Okay? So these are the 6 conditions for Salatul Janazah. Next, we have the arkan. There are 2 arkan of Salatul Janazah, meaning the thing which you cannot do without. Number 1, meaning Salatul Janazah cannot be done without. Number 1 is the 4 takbirat, right? This is the first takbir, or this is the first rukn, rather, right? That you must do the 4 takbirat. I will explain. We'll go through the entire Salatul Janazah, inshallah, and then we'll wrap up. But essentially, the 4 takbirat, that's 1 rukn, right? So therefore, if someone does not, complete the 4 takbirat, then their Salatul Janazah is not complete. And the second is standing. You must stand. Unless someone cannot stand and they must sit down. That's a different story. But if you can stand, you must stand and pray Salatul Janazah. These are the 2 arkan, two foundational or 2 necessary things. Right? Moving on, he says that there are 3 sunnahs of Salatul Janazah. So the first is doing tahmeed, right? The second is doing thana, and the third is making dua for the mayyit, right? And so meaning saying subhanak Allahumma bihamdik wa tabarak asmuk wa ta'ala jadduk wa la ilaha ghayruk. This is also one of the sunan, and also making dua. These are all amongst the sunan of Salatul Janazah. And also they mentioned that if, for some reason, instead of placing the head, instead of, for example, the imam is supposed to be in parallel to the chest of the mayyit, right? The head should be on the right side and the feet should be on the left side, right? But in case they flip it, right, it's still okay. It's still okay. Meaning if the head is on the left side and the feet are on the right side, that's still okay. There's nothing. Meaning if someone does it intentionally, then they'll be sinful. It'll still be correct, but they'll just be sinful, right? But that'll still be valid, inshallah. Okay. Questions on what we just discussed? We'll go through the Salatul Janazah. I'm just giving an overview of the entire Salatul Janazah and the things related to it. And then now we'll go into it, step by step, inshallah. Okay, so he says, وَأَوْلَى النَّاسِ بِالْإِمَامَةِ عَلَيْهِ السُّلْطَانِ إِنْ حَضَرَ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَحْضُرْ فَيُسْتَحَبُّ تَقْدِيمُ إِمَامِ الْحَيِّ ثُمَّ الْوَلِيِّ. So he says that, now firstly, we discuss who should lead the Salatul Janazah. Who has the right to lead the Salatul Janazah. So the primary person who has the right is the Islamic ruler, Sultan, right? The Islamic ruler, he has the right. He's an elected official, essentially. So he has the most right regarding all of his subjects. Essentially, he is the representative of every single person. So therefore, he has the first right. Second is, if he's not there, then the local imam. The local imam. Why? The scholars, they say that because the mayyit, he chose or he was happy with this person being his imam while he was alive. So therefore, we assume that he will also be happy with them being his imam in death as well. Does that make sense? And so basically, while he was alive, while the mayyit was alive, he selected or he was happy with this person being the imam. And so inshallah, after death also, he'll be happy with this person being the imam. And then the third person who has the right to lead is the wali. So generally, when we say right, this means that technically, right? I mean, technically, this is the standard. But for example, if the imam says, no, you know what? The family member, they know how to pray, then by all means. And the imam is okay with it, then of course the family, the wali can lead the salah as well. There's nothing wrong with that. This is just in sequence in case, for example, it comes to it. But generally, it doesn't come to that type of issue. Questions? Okay. فإن صلى عليه غير الولي والسلطان أعاد الولي. He says that if someone besides the wali and someone besides the sultan decides to pray in the absence of the wali is not there and sultan is not there, um, and someone decides to pray salat. Well, let's say, for example, the mayyit was there, and then someone just comes quickly, and then they start praying Salat of Janazah. You know what I mean? Something strange like this. In that case, the wali has the right to repeat that Salat of Janazah. Because, of course, if you're doing it without the permission and consent, then he has the right to repeat. When صلى عليه الولي لم يجوز أن يصلي أحد بعده. But if the wali goes and leads the salah, then no one else can repeat after him. Meaning that's the salah. That's the salah. Right? Once it's done, it's done. Because then after that, the fard is complete. The Salat al-Janazah, the fard kifaya, it's complete, and so therefore it's done there. فإن دفن ولم يصلى عليه صلي على قبره إلى 3 أيام ولا يصلى بعد ذلك. He says that if a person is buried and no one prayed on him or no one prayed on that mayyit, in that case you can go to the grave and pray on the grave. According to some scholars, you can only pray until 3 days pass. Only up till 3 days you have. Within those 3 days, you must pray the Salat al-Janazah, according to some scholars. Other scholars, they say that before the body starts decaying, before the body starts decaying, you can pray Salat al-Janazah until that point. Now, however long that is, that depends, right? That depends on like circumstances, that depends on the soil, that depends on so many different things. So therefore, it's not specific to only 3 days. That could be even longer than that. Okay? So, but ideally, yes, if a person does have, meaning if someone did not pray Salatul Janazah for a mayyit, then they should be prayed after at the grave, and that will fulfill the Fardul Kifaya, inshallah.
If the person Salatul Janazah is prayed, you miss that prayer, you go to the prayer.
No, this means that no one prayed Salatul Janazah on this person. So you have, according to one narration, you have up to 3 days. Another narration says until that body starts decaying, you have until that time to pray Salatul Janazah. فيقوم المصلي بحذاء صدر الميت, and the musalli, meaning the imam, will stand parallel to the chest of the mayyit. They say that this is because that's where the heart is, and the heart is heart has iman in it. The nur of iman is in the heart, and so therefore you should stand close, or parallel to that. Okay. Now we're going to go into how the method of prayer. It says, وَالصَّلَاةُ أَن يُكَبِّرَ تَكْبِيرَةً يَحْمَدُ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى عَقِيبَهَا. Again, this is the Hanafi method, right? So the prayer is that you say one takbir and you praise Allah Ta'ala immediately after that. Okay. So you can say Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik wa tabarak asmuk wa ta'ala jadduk wa la ilaha ghayruk. Whatever type of prayer that it is that you can say it. Some narrations mention wajalla thana'uk, but that's not the more correct opinion. The most correct and the best way to do it is just doing thana. Right? Now, for example, the Shafi'is and others, they say, for example, they recite Fatiha there, right? Imam Shafi'i says that you must pray Surah Al-Fatiha. You must recite Surah Al-Fatiha because there's another hadith which says that there's no salah or no salah will be valid except without reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, right? So therefore, Imam Shafi'i mandates that you must recite Surah Al-Fatiha. But we say that it's not necessary. But if a person does pray it, if a person does recite Surah Al-Fatiha, it's okay. Right? If they recite it meaning as a dua, they say that if you recite it as a dua, it's okay, fine. Even some of our contemporary scholars, contemporary Hanafi scholars, they also say that it's okay if you recite Fatiha as well. There's nothing wrong with it. So sometimes, for example, let's say you're praying you're behind someone and they're reciting Fatiha, for example. In that case, because it's so long, you recite Thana, you can still recite Fatiha after that as well. So that's also okay. ثم يكبر تكبيرة ويصلي على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So then you do the second takbir and you send salawat on the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. And that will be as whatever you know. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد إلى آخر, the entire thing. Whichever durood, whichever salah you know, that's the one you send on the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. ثم يكبر تكبيرة ثالثة يدعو فيها لنفسه وللميت وللمسلمين. Right? Then the third takbir, and you'll make dua for yourself, the mayyit, and the general Muslim population. So after the third takbir, you make all the du'as. Then ثم يكبر تكبيرة رابعة ويسلم. Then you'll make the fourth takbir and you say salam. In all of these cases, ولا يرفع يديه إلا في التكبيرة الأولى. You will not raise your hand. According to the Hanafi madhab, you will not raise your hand except in the first takbir. So this is the way. Again, so I'll practically demonstrate. Right? So Allahu Akbar. Right? Then you say سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وتبارك اسمك وتعالى جدك ولا إله غيرك. For the Hanafis, Shafi'i say you say Fatiha, and Hanafis, as I said, if you have time, you can recite Fatiha as well. It's not a big deal. Right? Then Allahu Akbar. We say Allahu Akbar without raising your hand. So Allahu Akbar. And then you say salawat on the Prophet. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. Then Allahu Akbar. Then you can make any dua. اللهم اغفر لحينا وميتنا وشاهدنا وغائبنا وصغيرنا وكبيرنا وذاكرنا وانثانا. اللهم من أحييته منا فأحيه على الإسلام ومن توفيته منا فتوفاه على الإيمان. Or any other dua that you know. اللهم اغفر لهم وارحمهم وعافهم واعف عنهم واكرم نزلهم وواسع مدخلهم, and so on and so forth. There are many du'as, and you can select any dua and you can recite it. Every single one of us should memorize at least one dua. At least you should know one dua that you recite. Why? Because let's say one of our close loved ones pass away, and I don't know a single dua, that should not be. Right? At the same time, we should. I was going to get to this, but we should teach our kids how to pray Salatul Janazah, and especially the du'as as well. Very important. I never know when I will die. So therefore, my son should know how to pray Salatul Janazah, and my son should be able to lead my Salatul Janazah. This is very important. Or my family, my relative, whoever it may be. Okay? There's no specific dua. You can just read whichever one you're able to read. Okay? At the very least, you should say Allahumma ghfir lahu warhamhu, or Allahumma ghfir lahu warhamhu. You can just repeat that, or Allahumma ghfir lana wa liwalidayna wa lahu wa lilmu'minina wal mu'minat. Basically, essentially just making dua for him, for the mayyit, and for yourself and the entire ummah, whatever dua you know. Okay, and you're not supposed to. All of this you're supposed to recite silently. All of this you recite silently. Okay, so this is the method of Salatul Janazah. At the same time, Imam Shafi'i says what? That you should raise your hands after every takbir. Meaning you say Allahu Akbar, you raise your hands. Hanafis, we say that no, you only raise your hand at the first time. After that, you don't raise your hands at all again. This is the entire Salatul Janazah. Very important. This is very important, right? He says that وَلَا يَدْعُوا بَعْدَهَا بِشَيْءٍ وَيَسَلِّمُ تَسْلِيمَتَيْنِ. He says that after the fourth takbir, after you finish the Salatul Janazah, you should not make a separate dua. Many people, they do this. That after you finish Salatul Janazah, they go ahead and they make another dua. That's not good. Why? Because Salatul Janazah itself is a dua. So how are you going to make dua after dua? And it's not established from the Prophet ﷺ that he made dua after Salatul Janazah. So therefore, you should not, this is actually, some scholars go ahead and say that this is actually a bid'ah, right? That to make dua after Salatul Janazah, they consider a bid'ah. Because Nabi ﷺ never did it. And so therefore, we should not do it either, right? But unfortunately, many people, they do it, and it's very difficult to stop them at that time. At that time, it's very emotional, right? So just be careful. During this time, don't push your opinions on others. Don't force people to do things, right? Encourage, say, especially if someone, they'll listen to you, then you can nicely encourage them, but don't force people. People are emotional as it is, so don't force, especially when it comes to sunnahs or other things, don't force people on these things. Sometimes what people do is they want to be at the forefront. So they do this, don't do that. You don't need to be at the forefront, right? You can just kindly advise and let the people, deal with it on their own. All right. Any questions? Yes, according to us, yes. Yes, we say that yes, it can be done at any time besides the makruh timings. Yes, meaning sunrise, sunset, and zawal. Besides those 3 times, yes, you can do it at any time.
If women can do the burial.
Yes, technically, yes. Technically, yes. That if there's no men available, there's no men in the area, then yes, the woman can also do it. This also opens the discussion of whether women should attend the Salah of Janazah or not. Right. So generally, it's better for women not to attend the Salah of Janazah. Generally. Why? Because women will become very emotional. They'll, and generally they'll not be able to control themselves. Right. No matter how much they say that I'll control myself, generally it's just in their nature that they are very emotional, right? So it'll be very difficult for them to control themselves. So therefore, it's better for them to not go. But if they do go, it's okay. But just make sure like hijab is taken care of, and also they don't become overly emotional. They don't start like shouting, screaming. This I've seen it very, very commonly that the woman they start shouting and they start becoming very emotional, and they start saying random things. Sometimes they say things which are not right as well, right? So just be very careful bringing a woman.
Sometimes like exceptional times, family members died, women in the family, no men, everybody not present for different reasons, but women had to do the burial. Then they do like put their body as samana to the ground. Later on, they can move the body somewhere else to their place. I remember myself, family, very love.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Moving on. Let's try to finish up, inshallah. ولا يصلى على ميت في مسجد جماعة. You should not pray. Generally, this is very important that according to the Hanafis, generally you should not pray Salatul Janazah in the masjid. It's actually makruh to pray in the masjid. According to the Hanafi madhab, it's makruh to pray in the masjid, right? Because the masjid was made for, obviously for salah and for cleanliness and so on. And if you bring the mayyit and so on, it may get dirty and so on. So therefore, according to the Hanafi madhab, it's makruh. Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad, and others, they say that no, it's okay. You can do that. You can pray Salatul Janazah. You can have the mayyit in the masjid itself. But the Hanafis, they say it's makruh. So ideally, you should avoid it. If you are able to avoid it, then avoid it. If it's not possible to avoid, then there's nothing you can do and you pray. But ideally, it's better to pray outside. Okay. فإذا حملوه على سريره أخذوا بقوائمه الأربعة ويمشون به مسرعين دون الخبب فإذا بلغوا إلى قبره كره للناس أن يجلسوا قبل أن يوضع من أعناق الرجال. So then they say now the way to take the janazah, right, or the mayyit rather. So when they're carrying the deceased, they should take the 4 different sides, right? The bier was known as, right? When they're taking the bier, then they should take on the 4 different sides, they hold it, and they should walk in a quicker pace, right? They should walk a little quicker. Not that they should be running, but they should walk a bit, a bit quicker, a bit with like haste, right? And then once they reach the qabr, people should not sit around, or people should not just sit down immediately. Rather, the mayyit should be placed in first, and then people can, sometimes people want to sit down and stay for a long time. No one should sit down before the janazah or the mayyit is placed in the ground. It's mentioned in one hadith. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says, "Man hamala janazah bi qawaimiha al-arba'a, ghafara Allahu lahu maghfiratan hatma." That the one who carries the janazah, Allah Ta'ala will definitely forgive that person. So carrying the janazah has a lot of reward. Right? Actually, it's mentioned that carrying the janazah itself is an act of worship. Right? Meaning carrying the janazah itself is an act of, carrying the bier itself is an act of worship. So therefore, people should hasten and people should do this. We should go towards taking the janazah, taking the bier. And also we should hasten. And a hadith Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, "Ajjilu bimawtakum fa in يكو خيرا قدمتموه إليه or قدمتموه إليه وإن يكو شرا ألقيتموه عن أعناقكم. Nabi Sallallahu in a hadith he mentions that you should hasten with your deceased. He says that, for verily if he's good, then you are presenting him to even better. You're giving him towards even better. But if he is evil, then you are getting rid of this evil. So therefore, it's better to hasten and do it as quickly and as early as you possibly can. So yes, even at night or any other time, yes, you should do it as quickly as you can. Okay, any questions? Okay, lastly, we'll add off here, inshallah. People should not be talking in loud voices in the graveyard. Right? I've seen this very commonly, unfortunately, that people they go there and while the janazah, while everything is taking place, whether the car is coming or the people are carrying, for example, the rest of the people, what are they doing? Socializing. They're socializing. I've seen this almost at every janazah. Almost every janazah I've seen that people around are just talking about. Sometimes it's like benefit. Sometimes like, oh, I remember this happened. I remember that happened. But generally, it's just useless things that they're talking about. Instead, if you actually want to help the mayyit, recite Quran. Recite Quran. Recite some du'as. Whatever you know. Recite, but especially Quran. My suggestion, and I've done this before. You can recite Surah Yasin, the entire Surah Yasin, in that time that it takes for them to bring the janazah from the car and put it in and so on and so forth. You can recite the entire Surah Yasin at least once. At least once you can recite Surah Yasin. So read it. And my suggestion is encourage everyone else to read it also. Tell everyone, please don't talk. Let's recite Surah Yasin. Flowers don't help the mayyit. Surah Yasin, reciting Quran will help the mayyit. Right? Any Quran, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, whatever it is, but that will help the mayyit. Right? Talking and other things will definitely not help. So please, everyone should be very careful about this, that they should not allow people to be talking, especially about useless things at the graveyard. While you're there, recite the Quran, just spend that time doing dua, dhikr, whatever you can. And then later, obviously people, we are insan, right? Allah forgive us. Immediately afterwards, we go to some da'wat and we start eating food and whatever happened, it's gone. So it's very important that while we're there, we should be concerned about the akhirah, and we should be affecting or thinking about this, that this could be us. Just today, this other person, tomorrow it could be me in that grave. Be very careful, and we should be thinking of ourselves and not distracted with other things. Any questions? Okay. All right. We'll stop here, inshallah, and we'll continue from here, inshallah, next week. جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحان الله وبحمده.